So it's the wrong term, but it's what coming to my mind now. But it's like in front of the heretic, the one who was just abandoning everything. Instead, he made him feel comfortable. And when he felt comfortable, then and he's welcomed with affection, and at that point, he can be guided. I remember Lama Gangchen Rinpoche always did the same thing. I saw every kind of situation. This ability to welcome and to Gelik Rinpoche. He, for example, in certain occasions, he was he didn't want people to make prostrations. He was really against it. He would say, I mean, you don't understand what you're doing. I mean, you just do it out of formality. If you're just doing it out of formality, better not to do it at all. And I was thinking about this. I mean, what is a tradition? Why do we do certain things? For example, prostrations. I see when we begin, we, you know, we like for example this evening when we begin. There's some of you who do prostrations, others who look around and you're thinking, what should I do? Or maybe you stand up and just out of respect, or you do it, But but when I stand up, I'm saying, I stand up because I'm saying I recognize your presence, and I give importance to your presence. So it's about the value that we are giving, because it's not about me as a person, but the role that I'm filling, and not not about the the religion itself, but what we're sharing here, this spiritual path. So so we're taking stock of how important this moment is, and so we stand up and we make prostrations. Prostrations. Every once in a while, I see. It's almost like I could feel I could hear the thoughts of some people thinking, what should I do? Why are we doing this? There's a little bit of discomfort, and maybe there. Some do it just because it's supposed to be done, and but what is a tradition in the end? I think that there are things that we do for a specific reason, and then after a while we continue doing it because it should be done. Others do it, so I should do it. And that goes like this, or because one tries to keep and to uphold something that works. It's working well, and let's keep it going, and almost like a habit. And we have traditions of every kind in our tradition, in our cultural context. How we sit at the table, how you hold up your cutlery. I remember my mother, who was married to an Italian, and he was fixated on how you eat, heat spaghetti, and it was, in the right order, or, when you eat salad, etc. And there's a reason. I mean, first you don't, or how you dress the salad. First you put the salt, and then you put the vinegar, and then the oil, because that way the salt just goes all over the salad. I remember, and I remember Stefano, who passed away. Anyway, what I mean is that traditions, these habits, are created because at a certain point we see that things work well that way. They have a reason for being in that way, and so we want to maintain it. We say, look, it works well like this. Keep going like this. And then a little bit like, playing telephone, where we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't remember why. And often it has to do with this feeling of belonging. I need to feel or I want to be seen like others. So it's better if I do the way they do. like think about all the rules of, how you act and behave at the table, for example. You know, the you know, if you compare Tibetan etiquette to Italian or Brazilian, it's all very different, you know. So, so, so sometimes we want to just maintain our way of doing things, or sometimes we're more influenced, you know, or but if you know, so and then who would be right, So, for example, like if you burp after a meal, and then is it healthy or not healthy to burp after you've eaten? Maybe, and in our culture, someone would say, "What are you doing, burping at the table?" And someone could say, "Well, I'm showing how well I've eaten and that I'm full." So. Um, So we do try to follow certain things because we're in a certain context, and we want to feel often accepted and welcome in this context. So we go somewhere where everyone does things in a certain way, and we want to be accepted, so we do the same as they. But often the connection with the reason is lost. So prostrations. What are prostrations? Should they be done? When should they not be done? First of all, the original word in Tibetan is chaksel. Tibetan's very special. The words are composed, and most of the words can be said in one syllable, and the new words are composed, we unite two syllables. So chak means hand, literally, and sel means request. That's one translation. I put my hands together. This is the most common meaning and translation given to translated as prostration, and then so they've translated the act itself instead of the actual meaning. So normally we put our hands together at our crown, at our forehead, at our throat, our heart, and then we go down to the floor and then back up 3 times. So what does this all mean? So first of all, we need to understand that, first of all, one of the things that's really harmful to us is arrogance. Arrogance is where we compare ourselves with someone and we feel superior to them. And it's through this feeling of superiority, we're not open to receiving. If I feel superior to you because my culture is better than yours because it's mine, or because if I feel better than you because my religion's better than yours because it's mine, or I feel, or whatever I feel, maybe it's a social position or anything, whatever it is. When we feel superior, we're closing ourselves up to the possibility of receiving something from another. It's said that at the top of the mountain of arrogance, the water of knowledge, of the teachings and experience don't stay, and the flowers of realizations don't grow. Instead, in the valley of humbleness, we take the water of the teachings, and the flowers of realizations grow. So when we listen to someone, when we go to see someone, we remember, first of all, that it's important to have this feeling of humbleness. And in this case, I have this job of sharing the Dharma, of teaching. It's sharing more than teaching, but whatever it is. Before we begin, I make prostrations to remind myself how important it is to be here with humbleness, because when we feel arrogant, it's as if we're blind. Arrogance doesn't allow us to see, doesn't allow us to receive, to learn. So in this case, for me, it's fundamental that I try at least to see you, because my job here, what I want to do, is not about being a great speaker or show how much I know. My objective here is to try to share something with you that is useful. Otherwise, I'll just stay home, quietly, where I'm absolutely fine. My function here is to be at your service, but be at the service of those who are listening. And so that means that I have to have the humbleness and not expect not expect to know what the other person needs, and to impose what I think they need. I need to be open to see and listen. And when we listen, we need to try to really open up our minds as much as possible to receive and get rid of these barriers. And some of these barriers come up as arrogance. Arrogance understood as feeling superior to another. And feeling superior to another, it can be on many levels. Often we're not open to what someone is saying because the other one or is from somewhere else, or is from a different religion, or maybe it's a religion that we ourselves don't want to follow, or maybe someone has a different political view, or because the other person is from a different social class that we don't respect, or dresses in one way or another, or has a different sexual tendency, whatever it is. What happens often is that we put up barriers between us. And in these barriers, I'm better than you. And when I'm better than you, as an attitude, naturally, I close myself up and I don't allow myself to learn from you, because anything I hear from you will be polluted by that mind. We say that when we listen to the Dharma, this is the spiritual path, we should abandon the three defective vessels. Number one, we shouldn't be an upside down pot. We're upside down. A pot that's upside down is when we're in a place like, we're a place here, but we're sleeping, or when the body's present but the mind is not, or we're here and who knows what else we're thinking about. It doesn't matter how much water you pour over a pot that's upside down, and no water is going to get inside. So we should avoid being an upside down pot. We should also try to avoid being a pot filled with holes, when one is there present, but it doesn't grasp things. So as something comes in, it just goes out. Maybe you're there for an hour, 2 hours. Oh, it's wonderful. What was said, I don't know. I don't remember. Luckily, there is a more subconscious memory that maybe grasps something. But we should be present with attention and pay attention. And the third, we should try to avoid being a polluted, a poisoned pot. So even if the pot is in the right position and it doesn't have any holes, if within that vase, that pot, if you put in any poison, any pure water that you put inside would become poisoned. And similarly, if I go to talk to someone, or I read a book or listen to someone, I'm receiving information, and I have this attitude of arrogance or hate or jealousy or envy, everything that I hear will be understood, and perceived through the filter of that emotion, and then I will be polluting it. So when we find ourselves in front of someone, it's important, first of all, if we want to learn something, if we want to have a, a deeper communication, if we want there to be a dialogue and not a double monologue, it's important to try to take away those filters that pollute what we receive. And one of the filters that pollutes is arrogance. Arrogance blocks. So when we go somewhere and we praise, or the Tibetan form to make prostrations, like I explained before, or could simply be putting our hands together to pay our respects. It's an act. It's said that it's an antidote to arrogance. We remember that we're taking down all those barriers. It's almost like, putting ourselves taking off our clothes. We're naked. We have nothing to fear. Sorry, it's just a parenthesis. I remember once in this Gompa, someone took that literally. There was Geshe Nawang Sharab, who has already passed away, and he was teaching at the Kunpen many years ago. And the people were seated here in front, and then they see that his face starts changing a little bit, and they don't understand what's going on. And then I see there was a girl who had come to teachings. I don't know what she understood, but she went behind the column. She took off all her clothes, and she came back, and she started making prostrations totally naked. And he didn't know how to react. And then someone saw her, and then they escorted her, back to her clothes where she got dressed again. Anyway, so we get naked, but not literally. Sorry for the anecdote, but I just remembered that. But it is important for us to take down these barriers between us and others, because when we're in front of someone else, we have so many just preconceived ideas and barriers based on the age or the social context, religious, what our expectations, who said it, I don't know if you've ever heard people say like, who said it, okay. The question isn't who said it, but the question is, does that make sense? Tibetan books, for example, they had this the traditional books had this characteristic. The more modern ones are different, unfortunately. But the antique Tibetan books had a very rigid rule, way of doing a layout. And the name of the author was never, ever put on the cover. The name of the author was put at the very end, where the author himself says, on this day, in this place, given these conditions, I, with my name, I composed this text. Why? Because when one reads a book, one needs to judge it for its contents and not judge it for who wrote it. So we should look at the content and not the author. This is a rule that unfortunately has been lost. So who said it? Who cares who said it? Let's try to understand what was said. Does it seem right? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? We can take beautiful phrases, it doesn't matter who said them. A little bit like there's that my mother many years ago, when I went to the monastery in India, she stayed at home She was home with the hepatitis, and she was in bed for many months. I don't remember how long exactly, and so she, so she accepted that I was at 12 years old was going to India to live in a monastery, but let's say that somehow that came out through her health, and she took many notebooks, and she would always write down, on trips. She was always writing, and when she was in bed in those months, she was rereading, her notes, and then rereading what she had written, what had been said, and so she compiled the most beautiful phrases that Rinpoche had said over the years, and they made this book of the oracles, and and there was one phrase, um, um, there was, and there was so there was this man who worked on a farm in Brazil, and my sister, for example, she used to go horseback riding there. She always wanted to do things, bigger. Um, if to, wanted to do things bigger, for more adults, So, and so my mother had taken this phrase from this farmer, or this man who worked the land, and because she would always tell my sister, you have to respect the length of your own legs, the size of your own legs. And so she put it in this book, and it seemed like it had been said by a great Lama, So it's an example of it doesn't matter who said it, but also, if you look, for example, there are these videos of Benigni who was commenting the Divine Comedy of Dante, and there was a time when I was listening to him in the car, when I'd go back and forth from Albagnano and Milan, and he said at a certain point that humbleness is the most difficult of all virtues, because as soon as you realize or you think that you're humble, you are no longer humble, and then you say like, oh, look how arrogant that person is, when instead I'm so humble. So even when we put ourselves in a position where we think that we're being humble, we have barriers, and where we're judging others, and we have preconceived notions. We're not open to receiving from others, and it's really important if we want to learn. It's something. Humbleness is something that's extremely important, and it should be cultivated. It's where we don't have any barriers, where we don't have barriers to listening to others or receiving others, and we don't need to compare ourselves to others to see ourselves. Arrogance instead starts from the comparison. When someone feels more superior to one, feels inferior to another, and if you feel inferior to somebody, you'll feel more superior to someone else. They go together. Instead, humbleness requires this state of non-comparison, and inside humbleness, one should have a great sense of self-esteem. There's this feeling of I trust myself. I don't need to compare myself to anyone to give value to myself. I don't depend on anyone's approval. I depend on my direct experience, my qualities, my ability of facing my own shadows, and I don't put myself in a position to feel superior to others. So I don't have these barriers in speaking to someone, listening to someone, being with someone. And when we take down these barriers, we can learn so many things in contexts that we would have never ever expected. I remember a story of the life of Saint Francis, for example. I read his life story when I lived in the monastery in India, and it really touched me. In many parts of his life, but in this part in particular, and Lama Gangchen Rinpoche had a special connection with him because when he first came to Italy, he lived in Gubbio, and he really loved Assisi, Saint Francis Assisi, Santa Chiara, and there's a certain point of his life, towards the end of his life, and he was, this is what I remember having read. I mean, what I actually read, I can't be totally sure, but I can tell you what I remember that I read. So I remember that Saint Francis was traveling, and he was very sick. He had tuberculosis, and he had he was almost blind, many pains in his body, and he wasn't able to walk. And even if the Franciscans, they were not allowed to walk, but in cases of sickness, there were exceptions. And so he was being led on a donkey, and this farmer said, "So you're the famous Saint Francis. You're the famous Francis that everybody's talking about." And he said to him, make sure that you watch what you do, because everyone has great expectations. In other words, the farmer said to him, act, act as you teach, because they're great. People have great expectations. I mean, he could have said, like, who are you? I mean, who are you? What do you want from me? Who do you think you are? Or he could have just said thank you, and then just go on, or he could have said, "I'm Francis, I know what I need to do." Instead, no. What did he do? He got off of the donkey, and physically it was extremely difficult for him to do this. So he got down on his knees in front of the farmer, and he said to him, "Thank you deeply for the most precious advice that you've given to me." And then he got back on to this donkey, and he continued his trip, his travels. This ability to see in everyone this, you can say it in different ways, but when there's humbleness, we can receive, we can be guided, we can receive instruction from anyone in many different situations. There's an important sutra of Buddha's. It's the story of Sudana. Sudana was he was a practitioner. He was someone who wanted to follow his path to enlightenment. And in this story, he goes to many different masters. And there are these panels in Borobudur where so this part of this story is told. And if I remember well, there are 50 masters, 25 women and 25 men there at Borobudur, you can see, but I think there are actually even more. And they're of all different kinds, all different walks of life. In Borobudur, they're represented equally between men and women. There are formal teachers like a master in a religious role in a monastery, or a prostitute, or a barman. People of all walks of life in all different areas, but they all opened Sudana's mind to see a part of the path. So in this sutra, this sutra shows us that we can learn from everyone. We need to be open to learn from everyone, which doesn't mean that we need to follow everyone and that everyone is an example of everything. But when we have this humbleness to receive, we can learn so much, and in contexts that we don't even expect. I had this experience. It was really deep and strong. It really touched me and it moved me. And I tell this story every once in a while because it wasn't superficial. It, when I was in front of this man, I was on the beach. I wanted to go to this faraway beach, which meant getting, about an hour in the car. And then from there, we walked about 2 hours. I walked and walked, and the beach was horrible. But anyway, I get there, and before I got there, there was this man with a very small, humble stand, and he was selling coconuts. And I asked him how much it cost, and the ones I had seen before were astronomically expensive. Instead, he was very fair, and he was about 50 years old or so. This man, maybe a little bit older. He was quite dark, and they're very simple. But when I saw him, and I was a little blocked because I found myself in front of someone that showed me as, I mean, he was really like, he was an embodiment of the union of dignity and humbleness. It's difficult for me to put this into words, but that man was able to teach me something extremely important just in those few minutes that we were together. And then I was really touched by him. At a certain point, I even lost contact with what I was doing, and then I asked him his name, and he said, Michel. Strange, rarely do I find a man named Michel. I thanked him. We looked at each other in the eyes, and even today, I don't know why, but when I remember that moment, I feel very moved, and I have a deep feeling of gratitude for him because his presence was able to teach me, show me something that, maybe hours of explanation and hundreds of books wouldn't have been able to teach me. So this is possible when we are open to receiving. And we need to be open to receiving. So prostrations, it's not just a formality. It comes from this need to cultivate humbleness, from our need to take down barriers between us and others. And in different contexts, there are different ways of prostrating. In this context, in the Tibetan culture, we have our way of making prostrations. When we're in different contexts, it's maybe giving, shaking one's hand, or different ways of saying hello. And who benefits from this? We do, because unfortunately, things that happen, and we need to be careful that it doesn't happen to us in our lives. There's to have a conversation, a dialogue is precious, but often we're in a double monologue. In the family it happens often, or at work. We talk, you talk on one side, you talk on the other side, and the people are not listening to each other. They just want to make themselves heard without taking into consideration that they need to adapt themselves to the needs of others. And in our culture, and it took me some time to understand this, I mean, often we talk not because we want to explain something to someone, but we talk because we just want to talk. It says there's You know, it's like we have a conversation and we finish the conversation and say, well, no, I have something to say, but we finished this conversation, but I want to give you my point of view. Is it going to add anything to the conversation? No, but I want to talk. What function does it have? You know, and then there's the Western way and the Asian way. You know, is this the Asian way is just like ping pong, back and forth, and every once in a while it seems like one is more is more concerned about how they hit the ball than seeing where the ball lands. You know, almost so you hit the ball so hard because you don't want the other one to be able to to be able to hit the ball back. You know, instead the Asian or the Eastern way it would be like taking a tray full of delicate things, and little by little I give it all to you, hand it to you, which means when there's a Asian style dialogue, at least in what I've seen in Tibet and in China. So the one says everything they need to say, and then the other one speaks, and rarely does the first person need to speak again. I remember sometimes with Lama Gangchen, I saw this quite a few times at Rinpoche. You know, you know, Rinpoche would speak, and then the person he was talking to wanted to already interrupt and add something. So no, first I'm speaking. So it's important so as they do in the East, one speaks, they follow their whole logical process, and they give it all to the person who's listening, and then the other person answers or says, what he thinks. Every once in a while, even these days, let's say with like the voice messages, that can help a little bit because someone needs to say everything in one voice message and then gives it to the other to answer. But what's important is the dialogue is an exchange. I need to understand also. I mean, why am I saying what I'm saying? Is because I want to transmit something, and it requires humbleness. To communicate well requires humbleness because you need to adapt oneself. You need to adapt yourself to the other. Allow yourself to see the other person, and not think that you know how things should be. So it's important for us to cultivate humbleness. When we're with someone, be ready to listen, adapt ourselves to others. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I think I'm right. Saying what's true in the wrong context or where there's no openness for it. It's not at all helpful. I don't know if you've had this experience. I know people who say they say right things in the wrong way, So maybe they're getting angry, and then with an attitude of anger, they say very true things. But in this case, what do we remember? Do we remember, what has more weight? The way someone speaks, or what is actually said? I've done my own experience and my own experiment here. I've tried to say something horrible, but also with a really nice way. And very often, people even take it well. It's almost as if they weren't connecting to the words that were being said, but the way in which they were being said. This is very strong. I mean, the way we say something talks much greater than the actual words that we say. So we really need to adapt ourselves to others. And this humbleness allows that to happen. It allows us to learn, to communicate. both for listening and being able to speak. They both require humbleness, and not just on a macro level, but governments and like where we're thinking of nations. Well, how is it possible that they're not able to come to an agreement? Well, in the same way that there's not harmony at home or at work or between brothers or between husband and wife. I mean, sometimes, why is it that we don't always agree? What is at the basis there? I'm right. You're wrong. But Lama, but look, Lama, I am right. But the point isn't if I am or am not right, but if I want to find a meeting point. So, because it's only having a meeting point, that I'm able to bring that person there. Because when you have openness, on our side, we can't take. We're not responsible for how the others feel, but if we are open, we have two possibilities. We're going to reinforce our own point of view when we're in front of a different point of view, or we're going to change our mind. When we're open to someone else, when we're not open, then we're not reinforcing our ideas, but we're just in a loop going round and round. It's like, like stressed out dogs that are just, chasing their tails. We go round, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. And we're not even reinforcing our view, because it's not that we see it from a different point of view or we're able to understand it better. Because personally, when I've found myself in front of someone who has a very different point of view, and I've allowed myself, those times that I allowed myself to be open, to create a dialogue, a kind of healthy debate, even inner, but also externally, what I saw is that I was able to see, I saw that this different point of view allowed me to reinforce my ideas and also make some changes. I could see my own point of view from a different point of view. And when I started to know the different Buddhist traditions, I knew the Tibetan Buddhism, but over the years I started to learn a little bit about Zen Buddhism and etc. And without going into many details, and I have tremendous respect for all traditions, but I always came back to feeling more and more comfortable in my own tradition, and I was able even to appreciate aspects of my tradition, or for example, I was able to see parts of the tradition maybe that are missing a little bit or not given enough importance. Like for example, in the Theravada tradition. In the Theravada tradition, a tremendous amount of importance is given to meditation and silence. And in the Tibetan tradition, it's there too, but it's not talked about or practiced so openly like this. So, we're able to learn from each other, but it requires humbleness. And it's not for nothing that very often we're reminded to cultivate humbleness, humility, because it's very easy to fall into the traps of arrogance, without even realizing it. And so when we begin the teachings, we should try to remember Remember to be humble. So someone asked me, so do I have to make prostrations? Should I do prostrations? No, you don't have to, you know. You don't have to do anything. What's ideal is that you're sincere with yourself. If you see that this action is a useful tool to remember something important, then we should use it. Is that clear? The other meaning of this word chaksal is very beautiful. Is when we put our hands together. This is one of the most important gestures.
Anche se uno dei gesti più
And one of the most common gestures. You know, sometimes people ask me, "Oh, Lama, teach me a secret, special mudra," and we think that something that is we think that the most secret things are the most important, but there's this idea that the secret things are better than the things that are so common, like always something really special, something. But why? Among all the mudras, and there are so many, these gestures, one of the most important, one of the most powerful, most meaningful, is the one that is used at the absolute most, which is the simple gesture of uniting one's hands together. And in the Tibetan tradition, we put the thumb that touches the base of the ring fingers, the thumbs. What does this gesture mean? The right hand represents love and compassion, masculine energy, method, the relative view, relative reality. And left is wisdom, not intelligence, but a deeper meaning of wisdom. The right view of reality, absolute reality. And the union, one with the feminine energy, when we put them together and to the center of our body, it shows us that our path has to be made up of love, compassion, and wisdom put together. It's the balance between masculine and feminine that goes beyond man and man or woman. It's energies we all have. It's the union of absolute and relative. We could spend hours discussing, explaining this, but this simple gesture just reminds us the essence of our path. So the right hand is bliss, is joy, and left is the so-called emptiness, this view that is consistent with reality. And so putting them together is a non-dual union of bliss and wisdom. We can talk about the union of also of the more rational self and the more emotional self. I mean, there's so many different ways that we could explain these two parts. And then energetically as well, when we put our hands together, this creates balance in us. Putting the tips of the thumbs at the base of the ring fingers, I mean, there are many meanings and functions. One function is that, for example, this ring finger is where a meridian starts. It's called the heart meridian. It's called the bodhicitta channel in Tibetan. So these meridians, these energy channels. So when we touch there, we're stimulating it, and when we stimulate it, it also affects our bodies. Using jewelry, for example, we've lost this wisdom. I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe in some contexts, but But mostly, I mean, why do we put a ring on the ring finger? Oh, because it's a tradition. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I mean, is there a difference if you put it on the left or the right hand? Yeah. When do you put it on the left hand? When you marry, you put it on the left one, right? For example, normally, so the actual wedding band, you know, are you, are can you use any material to make a wedding band, or should it be gold? You know, I'll explain what I've learned and is my interpretation. What happens is the different types of metals and stones, they interact energetically differently. This channel on the left hand is called the channel of bliss. And it's almost as if by putting the ring there in gold, it's like controlling that energy better, because if you get married, after you get married and you don't have any control over your sexual energy, the wedding, the marriage is probably not going to go very well. Of course, there are many modern relationships, but but it's a very practical reason. I remember once there was this girl who came to Lama Gangchen, and she was a little crazy. It was almost as if she couldn't keep herself in her own body. She just wasn't well. And I remember Lama Gangchen asked her to be brought a string, and then he made like kind of he made a ring for her, and then he put it on her left ring finger, and then for other things that he did, and also for this, she calmed down. So there is a reason, I mean, since how many centuries is the ring finger to be put on the left ring finger? Also, in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, this object is for the inner offering, and we use it to make this offering of bliss. And when we make this offering, we use the left ring finger and our thumb. So when we put the thumb at the base of the ring finger, we're generating bliss, but without attachment. Okay, so we live our life with joy, but joy is not the end. Is not our final objective. Another meaning, when we unite the two hands together and we put the thumb at the base of the ring finger, this also represents this inner process of bringing the subtle winds inside the so-called central channel, which in just very simple words means we're bringing ourselves to a deeper state of consciousness. So when we put our hands together like this, we're creating a positive interdependence to remember and remind ourselves that we shouldn't stay on just a conceptual plane, but we need to go deeper. And all of this can be found just in the simple gesture of putting our hands together. So when we talk about prostrations and when we put our hands together, that act is very important. I mean, it has its own power. It's been done for centuries and centuries, for millennia, actually. And there's there's the whole explanation of its benefits, etc., that over time we've forgotten. And so in another meaning of chaksel, which chak, other than just hand, it also means seal. Well, the Tibetan language is very strange. Depends on the context. It's, you know, there when you see translations, sometimes you see the strangest things because there's so many apps, with all these different dictionaries, and you see these modern translations where someone, the translator's taken one of the first words of the dictionary, but the word can change completely depending on the context. And chak means many different things. There was like a prayer, and it said. In Tibetan, it was
Chang.
Chi Chang. Chi literally means throne, and Chang means north. But in this case, it was the diminutive of Chi Chang Chupen. Chi is the diminutive of Ganden Tripa, is the throne holder, the throne holder of Ganden, and so the Chang was diminutive of Ganden Chupel. So all of that just became Chichang, which is actually the name of Chichang Rinpoche, which comes from that. So the first incarnation was the throne holder of Ganden, and his name was Ganden Chupel. And then in the translation, it said Chichang, and it said the throne holder of the north. So literally, Chang means north, but it also means to familiarize oneself. It also means like this to excellent state, or the state of Buddhahood. So sometimes the translations, if one doesn't understand the context well, the strange things comes out. So chak means both hand. So there's a in Tibetan we have it's common. There's the common form and an honorific form. So chak was an honorific. So, but it's also a diminutive of chakya. So, which makes reference to seal, which is the state of union of method, method and wisdom. This harmony between feeling and understanding, love and compassion, and then correct view and reality, masculine, feminine. I mean, this is what seal means. Sel means to grant me. So grant me the seal, which means what do I want? I want to reach the union of love, compassion, and wisdom. I want to reach this. I want to be able to have these two wings that I need to lead me to nirvana. So we need these two wings to be able to fly and reach enlightenment. One is called, to simplify, the method. This is generosity, compassion, love, this action. And on the other hand, we have the correct view of reality, the so-called wisdom. And the part of method is connected to masculine energy, and wisdom is connected to feminine energy. We see it everywhere. Like in these two objects, we have the dorje, we have this masculine energy, and the bell is the feminine energy, and they're always together to remind us about method, love, compassion, and then wisdom and this correct view of reality. So this to say that the deeper we go to understanding the meaning of making prostrations, the more we see, the more we see its function. It's not just a formality. We don't do it out of formality. So, getting back to Gelek Rinpoche, we shouldn't follow formalities. Um, that's not why we're here. We're not here to belong to a group and to do something because others do it, but we're here because we want to receive knowledge, experience that helps us be comfortable with ourselves and to do something for others. It's all there. I've seen, many times people would go to Lama Gangchen Rinpoche and ask him for advice, and they would say, can I go see that center, that ashram, that church, and go see this master? Can I go?" And Lama Gangchen always answered, always said yes. What you see is beneficial. Use it, and what you don't see as beneficial, just leave it there. And this is an important attitude that we should have. What we see is as beneficial, we need to take it and put into practice. What we don't understand, we can leave it. What we don't connect with, we leave it, which doesn't mean going against. You leave it. We put it on a waiting list. For example, Tantra. Tantra in Buddhism, very often it's understood as something mystical or something that it cannot be understood. It's not something one can explain. That it is without logic, and it could appear as such. But after many years, when I was receiving an explanation of the Tantra Guhyasa mantra, for example, at a certain point, it was as if all the pieces would just come together, and I saw that in reality, what's called Tantra Vajrayana is extremely logical. Extremely logical. It's like a frightening level of consistency and logic. There's nothing mystical in the sense that there's nothing that can't be explained. It's just that it uses an enormous quantity of symbolism that often we don't understand, and has a key that that to be able to understand this clear, you can't go at it in a linear way, but more a circular way. So what I've always tried to do is that when I don't understand something, that and they're studying, the Buddhist teachings, in depth, there are some things that I didn't understand, and then I put them on a waiting list, with the hope, that in the future I will be able to understand and see that it's right or not right. Once I asked one of my Kachin Losam Punso Rinpoche in Tibet, I asked him, the abbot, I asked him, I had a question about the correct view of reality. I gave him a very specific question that I had in my head for a long time, and I wasn't able to find an answer that seemed consistent. And then he gave me a marvelous answer. He said, "One day you'll understand." That's it. Why is it a wonderful answer? It's like you're not yet right to understand it. Abhidharma, be humble. I mean, don't expect that today you should be able to understand everything, but know that you have the ability to understand it in the future. And then 2 years later, not with the exact same question, but with a text that was talking about the correct view of reality, talking about that, the answer came to me. I was so joyful. I mean, there are things we understand, there's some things we don't understand, and just to admit, like here, I don't understand. Oh, how wonderful. Sorry, this is a small criticism here. I have this feeling that today, very often, we're 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 all we're all experts, then thanks to internet, we all have something to say about every topic. Or am I wrong? I, I mean, without really having understood anything, without having gone into depth, without having had our own experience. And here I see this difference, this modern generation, these Western um, um, Buddhists, and then the more antique ones, my like the abbot of the monastery who was extremely well respected. I would ask him something, what is this? He would say, in this text, Lama Tsongkhapa said like this and that. In that other text, this other master said this, and he was always making reference to others who, great learned masters who had come before him. And then I asked him, once, well, what do you think? I want to know what you think. And then he wouldn't answer. And then sometimes insisted a little bit, and every once in a while he would say, but he would say, what I think is not important. Who am I to say what I think? Who says that what I think is right? It's my thought. If you want, I'll share it with you, but don't take it for granted as being right. It's just my thought. And so he who had and it's just a whole lifetime of experience, a level of knowledge incredibly deep, etc. So he didn't want to you instead in the West, and we read two books and we write the third. And we need to be careful about this with ourselves. Before saying I know about this, it's not wrong to document oneself, to try to be open to understanding, and remember that the truth is always found between truths, and that reality is much more complex than just one point of view, one perspective. Because our tendency, we see reality through just one perspective, from maybe from one person or in a certain context or one experience, but there are many other different perspectives of the same thing, right? And what I see is that when we have these double monologues, can also be triple or quadruple, like you see on TV. Thank goodness I don't watch TV, but the objective there is not to find a meeting point. The objective is to impose one's point of view onto the other, and that just doesn't work. But it's important for us to be open to seeing. And for this reason, when we want to understand something better, we shouldn't stay in that context that seems the most obvious. We should try to understand the opposite. If there are two people, if there's conflict, for example, and there's a part that if I identify with one side, obviously the most spontaneous, the most obvious would be to identify with the parts that we agree with, and and reinforce all of the reasons that why we think that way, and see how the other one is wrong. for example,
fatto da qualcuno a cui siamo profondamente attratti.
and this you can see so clearly where if
Una persona
someone,
che
for
noi ci teniamo
example,
tanto e a
someone
un
we
certo
love,
punto
at a certain
viene
point,
evidenziato che quella
it's
persona ha fatto qualcosa
highlighted
che secondo
that
noi
that
non va fatto. Poi
person did
siamo pronti
something
a criticare.
wrong, that should be criticized, let's say.
Cosa
What
facciamo?
do we do?
Cerchiamo di essere neutri o
Do we
andiamo
try
a
to be
sminuire quello
neutral,
che è
or
accaduto?
do we just kind of diminish
Sì, è
what
vero,
happened?
però
Oh, it's true, but
si trovava in
okay, that
difficoltà.
person was really having a hard time.
Ma guarda
Oh,
che
but
è vero che non
it's
avrebbe
true
dovuto
that he
mentire,
shouldn't have
però hai visto
lied.
quello che gli ha
But
fatto.
did you see what they did to him?
Quindi cosa
So what
facciamo?
do we
Cerchiamo
do?
di
We try to
giustificare, di sminuire
justify, we
quello
try
che è accaduto.
to
Quando cosa succede
lessen,
invece?
diminish
Quando
what's
qualcuno a
happened.
cui abbiamo una
Or
forte
if
avversione
instead, on the
ha fatto
opposite is true
qualcosa di
too.
bello,
If someone for whom we have tremendous
ma
aversion
non
does
è che dobbiamo
something
andare lontani a
positive,
pensare le
you know,
cose politiche,
we
basta
don't
che ne
need to
so,
look at
l'ex marito, l'ex
politicians. I mean,
moglie,
just think about
piuttosto che qualcuno con
ex-husband,
cui uno ha
ex-wife,
una situazione in
or
famiglia di conflitto.
maybe a little bit of
Spero che l'ex
conflict,
marito, ex moglie non abbia un ottimo rapporto, però al di là di
a problem in the
spesso ci sono
family.
conflitti.
I hope that
Quando si parla e
ex-husbands and
noi
wives
vediamo,
have
viene
wonderful
evidenziato un
relationships, but
aspetto positivo di
the
qualcuno a cui
sometimes
abbiamo una forte avversione,
there can be conflict.
cosa facciamo?
But
Siamo neutri
when someone we
o
have
cerchiamo di
aversion
sminuire
for
l'aspetto
does something
positivo?
positive, do we
Sì,
remain
è vero
neutral?
che ha fatto quello,
No, we
però
say,
dietro c'è qualcos'altro.
yeah, it's true that that person did that, but there must be something behind it.
Non tutto quello che
Or,
luccica è oro,
you
no?
know, not everything that
Stai
glitters
attento.
is gold, be careful.
Quindi nella nostra
So, in our
attitudine
just
basica, umana, dei
basic,
rapporti umani,
human nature,
cosa ci guida nel nostro modo di
our human
percepire
way of
l'egoismo?
being, what guides us is our own
Questo
selfishness,
forte
this
attaccamento al io e
strong
al mio,
attachment
tramite il
to
quale
the
noi
I
dividiamo la
and the
realtà
me,
in
where
amici, nemici,
we
indifferenti.
we divide up the world in
Abbiamo
friends,
attrazione verso gli
enemies, and
amici,
neutrals.
avversione
We have
verso i nemici,
attraction towards our
indifferenza
friends,
verso i neutri.
aversion towards our enemies, and
E noi
indifference
cercheremo
towards
di
the neutral
rinforzare
ones,
il perché
and
quello è amico, rinforzare il
we
perché
try
quello è nemico.
to reinforce why that
Adesso
person
io mi
is a
trovo
friend
dinanzi
and
a un
reinforce
conflitto
why that one is an
e
enemy.
lo voglio
And
capire meglio,
if
voglio fare
I
delle scelte in un modo
see
più saggio, più consapevole, io devo
if I
ascoltare
want
con
to
una mente aperta
really
sia l'amico che il nemico.
if I want to be more balanced, then I need to listen to them
Devo
both,
aprirmi,
both
devo vedere i
the
vari
enemy
lati.
and both the friend.
Ma questo
See
su
the
qualunque
different
situazione,
sides in any
perché quello
situation.
che accade
Because what
è che
happens
quando
is
c'è una situazione
when
macro,
there's a
come la
macro
guerra che sta avvenendo
situation,
adesso, per
like the
esempio,
war that's happening
in
now,
realtà
in reality, it
riflette
reflects
il modo in cui
the
noi ci
way
relazioniamo
we
alle situazioni
relate
macro,
to
riflette il modo in cui noi ci relazioniamo alle situazioni micro
the,
quotidiane.
the way we relate to our daily micro
Ed è lì che
situations.
dobbiamo lavorare.
And that's where we need to work on.
Io non sto qua
That's what we need to
per
work on.
parlare della guerra
I'm not here
in Ucraina.
to talk about the war in
Sto qua
Ukraine.
per
I'm
dire
here to
quando
say
c'è un conflitto a
when
casa,
there's a conflict
quando
at
c'è un
home,
conflitto al lavoro,
when there's conflict at
quando
work,
ci troviamo
when
davanti a una
we
persona che
find
pensa in un modo
ourselves
diverso
in front of
da
someone who
noi,
thinks
che sia a causa
differently
del
than us,
vaccino, che
wh-
sia a causa della
be
guerra, che
it
sia a causa di qualunque
the
altra cosa che
vaccine
possa
or the
essere,
war or anything else.
dobbiamo avere umiltà,
We need to have
essere aperti ad
humility,
ascoltare,
to
a
be
vedere, a
open,
capire, perché
listen,
il
and try to
diverso ci
understand, because
arricchisce.
what is different enriches us.
E stare
And
attenti
be
a non
careful
cadere
to
nella
not
trappola
fall into the
di quel
trap
gioco
of
banale
that that
dell'egoismo, di
that
attrazione,
game
avversione,
of
dell'amico e del nemico.
selfishness,
Il gioco
of
più banale
attraction
qual
and
è?
aversion, because it's
Vado
incredibly
a
banal.
rinforzare le qualità
Because there,
dell'amico e vado a rinforzare
I'm just
i
going to
difetti
end
del
up
nemico.
reinforcing the
Questo è il gioco
qualities of my
banale.
friends and
Noi facciamo,
and
se vogliamo essere più
diminishing the qualities of my
possibile
enemies.
meno infantili,
And,
senza togliere nulla ai bambini
and
che ci hanno tanto da insegnare,
and
però inteso, se
but
vogliamo
instead,
essere più sviluppati in
if we
quello che
want to
facciamo,
develop ourselves and don't want
dobbiamo
to
stare
remain
attenti a conoscere
infantile
il diverso
beings,
per
then
capire meglio il simile.
we can really recognize and try to
Non so se è chiaro.
understand the understand
C'è un
better what's
aneddoto che
different,
viene
to
raccontato, una
also
parabola, non so quale sia
see
il nome
how
giusto,
we're
ebreo,
similar. There's an
in
anecdote,
cui
I don't know if it's Hebrew or
viene
not,
prima
but
il
it's
marito, la moglie,
there's first the husband or the wife comes first. So let's say the wife goes to the rabbi and says, "Oh, my husband did this, that, and the other because of this and that, etc., etc." And the rabbi says, "Listen, you're right. You're right." And then after a while, the husband comes and to the rabbi and says, "Oh, my wife, she's done this, and then this happened, and she did this, and she said this, and that happened, and I did that." And the rabbi says, "You're right." And then at a certain point, they come together, and they say, "Excuse us. We both came, and you've said we don't agree, but you tell us that we're both right." And he says, "Yes, you're right." I mean, there are many truths. There are many aspects. Then when we take a complex reality and we look at just a specific point of view, we can find many things that from that perspective, I mean, you can see that it's consistent. But the point is not about being the master of truth. The point is about creating more harmony. The point is about, like who is right. The question is, do we want to live peacefully or not? Because we live in a relative reality, and you just need nothing to change reality, to see something differently. And each one of us, inevitably, we all see things differently. But the objective isn't for us all to see everything in the same way. I mean, that's absolutely impossible. The objective is that each one of us seeing differently, may we be able to respect others and find a way to live harmoniously together. This is the most important thing. Because otherwise, what do? We try to get close to those who think the way we do more and more. Because if you think like I do, it reinforces this feeling that I'm right. And in social media, unfortunately, it's amplified because the systems that they use, I mean, they have these algorithms, there's terrible. So, I mean, just imagine it, walking through the city and we're just, imagine that there's some kind of brain behind us as we're walking through this city to make sure that we meet people who are similar to us. What happens when I continuously meet people who constantly tell me that I'm right? I'm reinforcing more and more my point of view that just becomes more and more narrow, because what opens our mind is not finding someone who thinks in the same way. No, it's finding someone who thinks differently. Social media, they bring us, they connect us, to connect, to say, like a friend of mine said, having many friends on Facebook is like being rich in Monopoly. Oh. Some would say, "Oh, okay, you're old-fashioned. You haven't understood anything." Okay, I'm holding my position. So what happens? These algorithms, they bring us to receive people, to see posts, messages that 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 we agree with, that things that we know that we're going to like. I mean, we know this already. So this brings us to having a very narrow point of view. And more, this is more and more diffuse, because the more narrow my view is, the less I'm going to be able to see the subtleties the less I'll, um, the less I'll be able to recognize that my point of view has, there's a little bit of your point of view in my point of view, and vice versa. And maybe we can find a meeting point. I mean, what I've seen that is something absolutely beautiful is that when two people who have two very different points of view, you know, it, two people who have two very different points of view but are open to debating, I've seen that they become really good friends because while debating, they learn from each other, they learn about each other, they learn about themselves. And in the traditional Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist studies, like 70% of the studies are done based on debating dialectics. And some of the questions often, Westerners, not only Westerners, but let's say more modern culture, if they would come to visit the monastery and they would watch debates, and at the end, or the question would be, who's winning the debate? And this question, and people would just, the monks wouldn't understand how there's no answer because there's no winner. We're not here to say, who wins the debate. It's not about winning. There's just no concept about that. There is the concept that if we want to get technically in, like who wins a debate, we have an affirmation, and then I'm going, if I contradict my original affirmation, I lose. Physically is also shown because when you contradict your affirmation, when you make the question, you slap your hand like that and with the palm down. And it's a very nice gesture because here with the right hand, which is the it's the wisdom that cuts the ignorance and pulls the beings out of suffering. But if you contradict yourself in debate, at that moment you contradict yourself, you put the palm of the hand upside down and you say "tsa," which is like saying shame. It actually, it's the word to say shame in Tibetan is hot face. So there is a technical moment when one loses the debate. You lose the debate when you contradict your first affirmation. But what happens when you lose? You go on because the objective of the debate is not winning. It's about understanding. It's about deepening one's understanding and knowledge. And often, there's no winner because the objective in a dialogue is not about convincing another person. It's about finding a meeting point and understanding better. It's about understanding ourselves better and opening up our points of view. And dialogues, debates come through conversations, through observation, through reading. And I just repeat it one more time. Forgive me if I'm boring. Let's observe, let's look at our own dialogues, our necessary dialogues in our own lives. I mean, how many dialogues do you need with your children, with your spouse, or at work, or maybe dialogues that don't come about because there's tension, and each one is holding on to being right. Because if someone comes to us with a different point of view, what's our attitude? Oh, wonderful, wonderful that you. Well, wonderful that you have a different point of view, so then I can widen my widening my understanding. Do we say like this, or do we go on the defensive? No, we go on the defensive, and we want to show that the other person's wrong, and we do horrible things. You know, you know, we go off subject, and we look for weaknesses in the other, as if, for example, we're talking about what's better. I don't know, to, to eat meat or be vegetarian. This is we could open up a debate on this. You know, so let's say, so you know, or maybe if I just get off subject and I say, but you get angry often, or or because you're diabetic, or your sexual conduct is wrong. Either I follow a logical, either one should follow a logical discourse instead of looking for weaknesses in the other, obviously. This happens like in politics, obviously. I don't know if you've ever seen a political debate where they don't talk about anything useful, but they're just highlighting defects in each other. Because it's a couple of years now, it just is happening more and more. But sincerely, if someone needs to lead a country, to lead a city, because I mean, a politician doesn't need to be a good speaker. It needs to be good at governing, a city or a country. If he does that well, so what color his underwear is, or her underwear is, what they did in childhood, how often they got married, or what religion he is, or what he eats before going to bed. What do I care? What I want to know is what's his or her view, what's his ideas, or how is he going to govern this city? How is he going to govern this country? And if he has the ability to do that. So is this person sincere? Can I trust you? Will you give priority to the common good? I mean, this is a fundamental question to me. But getting back to the micro, every once in a while, sometimes I see, we criticize the public figures. Oh, this person's like this, but have you ever met this person? No. But look, what you've seen, so just some news footage. Oh, I remember years ago when Lama Gangchen, it's around 1997, he often talked about, how we shouldn't trust the media in general. I mean, I don't know if you've ever given an interview to a newspaper. It's years ago, or there was a time where I was giving many, many interviews. Only once, I remember once, that I was shocked that what I said was actually written. And there was nothing written that I hadn't said. It's because they said that I was the reincarnation of Lama Gangchen. I mean, they've written the strangest of things. But beyond that, maybe beyond someone writing what they don't have knowledge about, maybe do it quickly or whatever. But if I need to talk about my friend who did something bad, what am I going to do? Am I going to highlight this negative thing, or am I going to diminish it? No, I'm going to diminish it. I'm going to talk about something else. Instead, if I have an enemy that did something wonderful, I'm going to diminish that. And instead, if I have a friend who did something good, I'm just going to enlarge that. I'm going to highlight it. I mean, this is our way of being. Media is just made up of people, and they have their own interests, like all of us. When because when we talk among ourselves, when we talk about our friends, we you know we highlight their positive qualities, and we do the opposite for our enemies, or are we just perfectly balanced and neutral? That would be great, but trust. I don't trust. I mean, there is no impartial communication as long as we are taken by our selfishness, etc., and that we're convinced that we're right. I mean, there is no impartial communication. You know, even even if I had no interest in manipulating anyone, I still can't be impartial. I don't know if that's clear. And with this, I don't mean to say that we shouldn't respect the media. I have great respect for journalism. I read the newspapers every day. I have respect for the media, but I know that anyway, what I'm reading is one point of view that has, about an event. It's not the truth, the reality, and and the same thing about everything that we live. So when we're in front of someone who has a different point of view, instead of being on the defensive, we say, okay, I can look at my point of view again. I can learn something new. This requires a humbleness, and when we're in front of others, we prostrate. It can be a simple. Just we can put our hands together. We can shake someone's hand. We can slightly bow, but just bring those barriers down. Those barriers that don't allow us to grow and learn, don't allow us to widen our point of view and understanding. This would help. This help us so much because it would bring us maybe a little crisis, because at a certain point we can. Okay, so there is no reality here. I mean, where's where's right? Where do I hold on? Because it's very comfortable to have a a very narrow a narrow point of view. It's black or white. It's this is my view. I'm like this. This is good. This is bad. This one is good. That one is bad. It's easier to manage such a view. It's also easier to manipulate. Unfortunately, you need a lot of effort on our side to navigate the gray zones, where and we need to judge the actions and not people. And if I love you and if I love you and you do something stupid, I'm going to keep loving you, but I'm going to see that you've done something stupid. I'm not going to say that stupid thing you did is not stupid because I love you. Um, you know, you know. And if I say that you've done something stupid, it's not that I'm not respecting the love that I feel for you. No, this is conduct that is not beneficial for you. It's not beneficial for others. And you did it. I'm sorry that you did it, and it ends here. Because this takes us, and I'm just going to touch on this subject before we conclude, a very important point of view, a very important point along our spiritual path is that when we love someone, when we have compassion for someone, it doesn't mean that we should accept everything that they do. it means that if someone acts in a way that we think is wrong, it's no reason to not love that person. Just think about someone, for example, who is the embodiment of evil. Think of someone like that. I don't know if a name comes to your mind. Put that person in front of you and try to say to this person, I love you. I want you to be happy. Is it difficult? Why? It's almost like saying I need to agree that I agree with what you're doing if I say that I love you. But no, I can condemn what you do and your conduct. I can be against this, that, and the other, but still keep this feeling, maintain this feeling of wanting your happiness. I want you to be happy and have the causes of causes of happiness, like in the 7 limitless meditations. You know, I want you to be happy, but I want you to have love and generosity, morality, patience, that you have also the causes of the happiness. Not just that you're happy. May all beings be happy, and have happiness in the causes of happiness. And also, I want you to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I want you to be free of hate and arrogance and envy, etc. So it's a great exercise to put someone for whom we have a great aversion for. Normally, they're political figures, you know. And you can see how easy it is to manipulate people with this like embodiment of good or bad. But instead, look and say, I love you. Allow ourselves to do that. And see that we can see someone close to us, someone we love a lot, which doesn't mean that we need to accept everything they do. We can say, okay, this I don't think is good, you know, but how can I help you? How can I change, you know? I mean, do I have that possibility or not? So I judge the actions and not the person. I don't generalize. Like, it's not because someone has positive qualities that everything that they do is positive or good. It's not that because people have negative qualities that everything they do is bad. So it's important, I'm just going to repeat it one more time, you shouldn't be taken by these games of attraction and aversion. Instead, understand, well, you know, what are the actions and what the contact that is beneficial, what is good, you know. And so if I am against, if I'm against some kind of conduct or behavior, the first thing I need to do is to take that behavior out of my life, out of my own conduct. You know, if I'm against violence, then I need to take violence away, out of my conduct as much as I can. If we asked ourselves, do we want to live in a country that is consistent and generous, or do we want to live in a country where there's a system where there's corruption and selfishness, etc.? I mean, say the rhetorical answer is that we want. I mean, do we want corruption or do we want fairness? You know, the rhetorical answer is, you know, that we want justice. But when we have an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, what do? I mean, just small things even. No, this doesn't hurt anybody. But we know that it's not correct. But it's something so small. It's small, we get used to it, you know. But how, you know, how many, you know, it's just how much is it? Oh, it's 10 million. But I'm used to dealing in billions. No. If I don't want to live, if I'm if I'm ready to condemn corruption or violence, then first of all, first of all need to remove um, physical, verbal, and mental violence from my own conduct. Let's remember that we live in this interdependent reality where the actions of each one of us have enormous power over the whole. Every word that we say, every choice that we make, every action that we do, it's never in vain. It always leaves an imprint in our own life and in the lives of others that come into contact. So we should not follow formalities, but it's important to also understand what the traditions teach us. Sometimes I've done things out of formality because I wanted to be respectful in the context in which I found myself, where maybe, didn't want to offend. I didn't want to offend, even if I didn't understand the why. But generally speaking, in our context, if you ask yourself, do I have to make prostrations? No. If I want to, can I do them? Yes. But why? Because I feel the importance of cultivating respect and humbleness, and it's what we talked about. And what I want to leave you with today is the importance of humility, humbleness, because and to see if we, do we, how is it that we deal with others? Are we open to others to be able to learn, or do we think that we are the holder of the truth? It's time for dedications. I thank you very much, and to give me also this opportunity